Once upon a time there lived a little King David who grew into a big King David.
That's me!
Things were going really well for King David. His kingdom was safe.
Safety first, everyone.
His kingdom was rich.
We have lots of money!
And David was loved by his people. We love you, King David. You're the best.
Well, thank you.
David was pretty happy with himself and what he'd done. So happy with himself, in fact, that he decided not to go off to war one year with his men, but to stay home and put his feet up instead.
See you fellas, you've got this.
Everything seemed like it was going pretty peachy for David until one day the prophet Nathan came to visit him.
What brings you here, Nathan?
Nathan had a message from God for David.
I've got a message from God, but I'm going to tell it to you as a story.
Oh, nice. I love stories.
Okay, here goes. Once upon a time, there was a rich man and a poor man. The rich man had lots of sheep and cattle, but the poor man only had a little lamb. And the poor man loved his little lamb and he raised it. And he took care of it, and he even let it come and have dinner with him in his house with his children. Sadly, one day, the rich man had a visitor come to see him. He wanted to make dinner to impress the guest, but he didn't want to use one of his own sheep or cows. So he hatched a plan, and he saw the poor man's little lamb, and he went and stole it, and he cooked it, and he served it up to his guest.
Hearing this story made David very angry.
That's horrible. That rich man should be punished.
Nathan nodded solemnly and said,
God says that man is you, David.
Nathan then explained to David how God had told him about something David had done while his troops were away fighting. David had seen the wife of one of his troops, taken her for himself, and then gotten rid of her husband to protect his reputation. David was just like the rich man with the lamb. He sinned against God and against others. David couldn't deny his sin, and so he said,
I've sinned. I've made a bad choice.
That's true, David. You have sinned against God and you've hurt some of his people. But God is so good that if you ask him, he'll forgive you and he'll heal the hearts of so many people.
David then dropped to his knees and cried out to God, asking for forgiveness. He admitted that he'd hurt others and that he'd done the wrong thing. He'd sinned against God. There were consequences for his actions and for others, but thankfully God forgave David. And on that day, David learnt a really important lesson.
Sin is that new!
At the same time, he also learned about God's grace. Jesus died to win our forgiveness and free us from our sin. God is so good that even when we're making mistakes, we can be forgiven. And thank God for that.